Say it again. Noah Pierce tried to laugh, but the sound died in his throat. The room was too quiet for laughter, too old, too polished, too full of people who had learned to weaponize silence. The mahogany table in the center of Blackwood Hall shone like a dark lake. Brass lamps cast warm pools of light, but nothing about the atmosphere felt warm. Not the framed portraits watching from the walls. Not the velvet drapes that held back a gray Boston afternoon. Not the three men standing near the fireplace, each of them smiling the way sharks smile when they sense blood. At the end of the table, Evelyn Hart Evie, to the people who had known her before she learned how power actually moved, placed something small and soft on the wood. A crumpled $20 bill. It landed with a whisper. Noah's eyes locked onto it like it was a snake. Evie didn't sit. She didn't fidget. Her hands stayed calm at her sides, her posture straight, her chin level. She wore black, not mourning black, but authority black. A tailored coat. A clean, sharp line from shoulder to wrist. A watch that looked quiet until you realized the face was made of something that cost more than Noah's car. Her voice was even, not loud, not pleading. "Go on," she said. "Call me a burden." Across from her, Noah swallowed hard. His jaw tightened. He was still wearing the same suit he'd worn to their divorce hearing. It didn't fit as confidently in this room. Here, the fabric looked thin. The seams looked cheap. The lie he had brought with him looked thinner still. To his left, Vivian Cross, glossy, rich, untouchable in a pale cream coat, shifted her weight as if she'd suddenly remembered she had somewhere better to be. 3 seats down, Attorney Graham W. Kingsley leaned forward, fingers folded, the faintest hint of patience on his face. The kind of patience that didn't come from kindness, but from certainty. "Mr. Pierce Graham said your testimony will be recorded as part of the estate proceedings. I suggest you choose your next words carefully." Noah's gaze darted first to Graham, then to the 3 Blackwood heirs. Dorian Blackwood's smile didn't waver. Spencer Blackwood's hand rested on the back of a chair like it owned the chair, the floor, and every inch of air in the room. Julian Blackwood rolled his shoulders, already irritated, already bored, as if this was all taking too long. Noah's mouth opened, and Evie lifted her hand palm down, gentle as a lullaby. "Before you speak," she said, "I want to show everyone what it costs to buy a man who thinks he's worth more than he is." Graham nodded once. A screen at the side of the room, an old projector hidden behind a paneled door, flickered to life. The first frame froze on Noah's face, caught in ugly fluorescent light. His own voice filled the hall, tinny and unmistakable. 50 grand. That's it. For me to say she's unstable." Noah went white. Evie's eyes didn't leave him. Somewhere behind her, a clock ticked, slow, patient. And in that tick, 1 second stretching into a lifetime, Noah realized the truth with the same cold clarity as a blade. Evie hadn't come here to beg for what was hers. She had come here to decide what was left of him when she was done. A pause, a breath. Evie's voice low and precise. "Funny, isn't it?" She tapped the crumpled 20. "This is where you thought the story ended." Then her gaze lifted to the portraits, to the table, to the men who thought bloodlines were ownership. "But this story," she whispered, "doesn't begin here." And as the video continued to play, the room began to shift like ice cracking under a careless foot. To understand why Noah Pierce was standing in Blackwood Hall watching his own betrayal eat him alive, we have to go back. Back to the smell of fryer oil and soap. Back to the rain. Back to a woman who carried exhaustion like a second skin, and still managed to keep her heart beating when everything around her tried to break it. Boston rain doesn't fall like rain. It leans on your shoulders like it's trying to force you into the pavement. It turns streetlights into smudged halos and makes the city look older than it is, like every brick and every alley carries a secret it refuses to confess. Evie Hart knew the rain by its sound. She could tell how hard it was hitting the diner windows without looking up. That morning it was a steady hiss against the glass, the kind that turned your shoes damp even if you ran. The Harborline Diner sat near the docks, one of those places you only noticed when you needed it. The sign buzzed. The coffee was too strong. The seats creaked like they had opinions. Regulars came for eggs and familiarity, and stayed because the world outside was cold. Evie's world was always cold. She moved between tables with practiced speed balancing plates, like her hands were born for it. 2. Scrambled extra toast. Black coffee, no sugar. One more ketchup, hon. Her smile came on command. Not fake exactly, just carefully rationed like everything else in her life. Because after this shift, she had another job. And after that job, she had a husband waiting at home with dreams too expensive for him to pay for. Noah Pierce didn't always look like someone who'd become cruel. When she met him, he was all promise and soft edges. A guy with ink-stained fingers and a laugh that made you feel like your tiredness wasn't permanent. He talked about business school like it was a doorway to a better life. He talked about building something with the kind of fire that could warm you if you stood close enough. Evie had stood close. She had paid the price of standing close. For 2 years, she worked double shifts to cover tuition books, rent his networking events, his just one more internship, his "this is temporary, Evie, just until I make it." And each time she thought they were near the finish line moved. Noah's ambition stretched like a shadow at sunset longer the closer she got. At 10:43 a.m., Evie wiped down table 7, her hands smelling like lemon disinfectant and dish soap. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A text from Noah. "Need cash for lunch meeting. Can you? Venmo me $40. Evie stared at the screen. $40 was almost 3 hours of her work after taxes. She typed back, "I'm on shift. What's the meeting for?" His reply came fast. "Don't start. This is for my future. For our future." Evie's thumb hovered. She thought about the rent, the electric bill she'd paid late last month, the way her body had started to ache even when she was sitting still, the way her smile felt like it was glued to her face. Then she sent the money. She always sent the money. Because she loved him. Because she believed in him. Because she didn't know yet that some people treat love like an ATM that never runs out until one day they decide you're overdrafted. By noon, her manager, Rosa, flicked her gaze toward Evie's face. "You're pale," Rosa said. "You eating." Evie forced a grin. "Coffee counts." Rosa snorted. "Coffee counts as a warning sign. Go take 5. Evie slid into the back hallway where the air smelled like bleach and fried onions. She leaned her forehead against the cool metal of the storage shelf and closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw the bills stacked on the kitchen counter. She saw Noah's laptop open late at night, the blue glow lighting his face while she folded laundry with cracked hands. She heard his voice from last week. "Don't be dramatic, Evie. People work hard. That's life. Hard." As if she didn't know. As if her whole body wasn't a receipt proving exactly how hard she'd been working. A cough behind her. "Evie." She opened her eyes and turned. A man in a clean gray suit stood near the back door like he belonged in a different world. He held an umbrella closed at his side, water dripping onto the tile. His hair was silver at the temples, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," Evie said, automatically wiping her hands on her apron. "Customers can't be back here." He didn't blink. "My name is Graham W. Kingsley," he said. "I need to speak with you privately." Evie's heartbeat stuttered. She looked him up and down, confusion fighting instinct. I don't know you." "I know," he said. His eyes held something that made her stomach tighten. Not threat, not flirtation, something worse. Something final. "I'm an attorney," he continued, "and you've been named in an estate matter." Evie let out a small laugh that sounded nothing like humor. "Estate, sir. I think you have the wrong person. I'm—" Avery Evelyn Hart Graham corrected. "Gently born Evelyn Archer Hart." Evie froze. Nobody called her Archer. Nobody. She didn't even know why that name made her throat tighten, why it pulled at something old inside her. Graham watched her carefully. "You're about to receive information that will change your life," he said. "I'd prefer you not learn it in this hallway next to a mop bucket." Evie's fingers curled around the edge of the shelf. "My life doesn't change," she whispered before she could stop herself. "Not really." Graham's gaze didn't soften. It sharpened. "It does today," he said. And then he spoke a name Evie had never heard in her daily world, never heard in the diner, never heard in the apartment she shared with Noah, never heard in the small, tired circles she lived inside. Gideon Blackwood. The air seemed to thin. Graham continued, voice calm and exact. "Gideon Blackwood, founder and majority owner of Blackwood Development Group, passed away last night at 1:12 p.m. Evie stared blank. I don't... He left a will," Graham said. "And in that will, he acknowledged you as his biological daughter." Evie's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Graham took a small envelope from his briefcase. Thick paper, a seal pressed into wax. He left you everything he said. Evie's knees went weak. That's not possible, she breathed. My mother, she never. Your mother and Mr. Blackwood had a relationship decades ago, Graham said. It was kept quiet, for reasons you will learn. But his paternity has been confirmed. Evie blinked hard as if she could clear the world like a fogged window. Everything, she repeated, voice hollow. Graham nodded. The estate value is approximately $1.3 billion. Evie's laugh broke out again, shaky, involuntary, almost ugly. That's not real. Graham didn't flinch. It's real, he said, and you are not safe until we establish control of the narrative. The phrase landed like a stone. Control of the narrative. Evie was used to survival, not narratives. Used to scraping by, not controlling anything. Her phone buzzed again. Noah. Where are you? Don't tell me you're slacking. I need you focused, Evie. She stared at the text. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel love. She felt distance. A widening, quiet distance like the shoreline pulling back before a wave. Noah didn't believe her at first. When Evie walked into their small apartment that evening, hair damp from rain shoes, squeaking slightly on the cheap floor, Noah was sitting on the couch with his laptop open, and his confidence relaxed across his shoulders like a blanket. He didn't look up right away. You're late, he said. Evie stood by the door, still holding the diner's smell on her clothes. I needed to talk, she said. Noah sighed dramatically, eyes still on the screen. About what? Please don't tell me it's the bills again. I told you we're in a transition phase. Evie swallowed. My father died, she said. Noah's fingers paused on the keyboard. Finally, he glanced up. Your father. You don't have a father. Evie's throat tightened. I didn't think I did, she whispered. But an attorney came. He says my biological father was Gideon Blackwood. Noah stared. Then he laughed. A quick, dismissive sound. Sure, and I'm the King of England. I'm serious, Evie said. There's paperwork. A will. He left me. Noah's laugh stopped. His eyes narrowed. You're messing with me. I'm not, Evie said. He left me. Everything. Silence. Noah blinked once, twice, like his brain was rebooting. Then he leaned forward, the laptop forgotten. How much? He asked. Evie hesitated. The number felt obscene in her mouth. 1.3 billion, she said. Noah's face changed. Not into joy, into calculation. The next 30 seconds could have been hope. It could have been him grabbing her hands, telling her she didn't have to work herself into the ground anymore, telling her he was sorry. Instead, Noah's first words were, okay, then we need to be smart about this. Evie waited for warmth. It didn't come. He stood pacing the living room already, imagining suits and cars and rooms he'd never earned. We can pay off my loans, he said. We can, Evie, this is insane. This is everything. Finally. Evie's chest loosened a little. Finally, she thought something good. Then Noah's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it quickly and turned it face down. Evie noticed anyway. A name flashed just for a second. Vivian. Evie's stomach tightened. Noah, she said softly. Who is Vivian? Noah didn't stop pacing. Someone from work? He said too fast. You don't have work, Evie said. You have an internship. Noah's jaw tightened. Don't start. Evie took a step forward. I've been paying for your life, she said, voice trembling now. I've been working 2 jobs. I haven't slept properly in months. And you? Noah spun toward her, irritation sharp. You're acting like a martyr, he snapped. I didn't ask you to be dramatic about it. Evie stared at him. I did it because I loved you. Noah's eyes flicked to the face-down phone. Then, back to her. His expression hardened into something new, something meaner. Love isn't enough, he said. And if you're going to be like this, maybe this marriage isn't worth it. The words hit like a slap. Evie's breath caught. You don't mean that. Noah's mouth twisted. I do, he said. Look at you, Evie. You're exhausted all the time. You smell like fries and disinfectant. You're a weight. A weight. Evie's vision blurred. I'm your wife. Noah's voice turned colder. You're a burden, he said. And now you're trying to drag me down because you're insecure. Evie's hands clenched. Insecure, she whispered. About what? Noah exhaled sharply like he was tired of pretending. Vivian Cross, he said. The name landed like broken glass. Evie stared. Noah didn't stop. She's successful. She's smart. She understands what it means to build something. Not he gestured at Evie's uniform like it offended him, not this. Evie's mouth opened. No sound came. You cheated, she breathed. Noah shrugged. Don't make it ugly, he said. It just happened. Evie's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. You let me work myself sick, she whispered while you. Noah's eyes flashed. You chose that, he snapped. You chose to be a waitress. You chose to stay small. Stay small. As if she hadn't been holding him up. As if her sacrifice was a flaw. Evie's fingers shook. I want a divorce, Noah said, voice suddenly calm, almost relieved. This isn't working, and honestly, I deserve better. Evie's stomach turned. She didn't know which part hurt more, the betrayal, or the way he said it like a business decision. 3 days later, in a sterile office with a mediator who looked bored, Noah signed the papers quickly. Evie signed them slowly, her hand trembling, the pen heavy like it was filled with lead. When it was done, Noah leaned back and smiled. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $20 bill, and tossed it onto the table in front of her. It fluttered, landed crooked. His eyes were bright with contempt. There, he said, that's the last money you'll ever get from me. Evie stared at the bill. She didn't pick it up. Noah stood, straightening his jacket like he was stepping into a better life. Try not to waste it, he added. Wouldn't want you getting any big ideas. He walked out without looking back, and Evie sat there numb, staring at the 20 like it was the final insult carved into paper. She didn't cry until she reached the parking lot. Boston rain fell on her face, and she couldn't tell where the water ended and she began. Her phone buzzed. A call. Unknown number. Evie answered with a voice that barely existed. Hello? Graham Kingsley's voice came through crisp. Miss Hart, he said. I'm sorry for your loss. Evie swallowed. It doesn't feel real, she whispered. I know, he said. That's why we need to move quickly. The Blackwood family will not accept this easily. Evie leaned against a wet car. What do you mean? Graham's pause was brief. I mean, he said you just signed a divorce paper and you don't yet understand what you've become. Evie closed her eyes. What have I become? Graham's voice was calm, but the words carried thunder. The sole heir to Gideon Blackwood, he said, and the new chair of $1 billion empire. Evie's breath caught. Somewhere nearby, a horn blared. Someone shouted. Life kept moving indifferent. But Evie felt it the moment the universe shifted its weight. And somewhere far away, Noah Pierce was walking into a new life. Unaware that he had just thrown $20 at a woman who was about to own the world he wanted. The first thing Graham Kingsley did was remove Evie from the place she could be reached. Not with violence, with strategy. He arrived the next morning in a black car that looked like it had never been rained on. Evie stepped out of her apartment building wearing jeans and a hoodie, her diner shoes in a plastic bag, her eyes swollen from a night of sleepless shock. She held the crumpled $20 bill in her fist like a talisman and a wound all at once. Graham watched her hand. You kept it, he observed. Evie looked down, surprised she hadn't let it go. I don't know why, she admitted. Graham's tone was matter-of-fact. Because humiliation is sticky, he said, but it can be useful if you know how to hold it without letting it poison you. Evie stared at him. He opened the car door. Get in, he said. We have a lot to do. The lot wasn't shopping sprees and champagne, not at first. It was meetings in quiet offices. It was documents. It was security protocols. It was learning the language of people who never asked the price of anything because they never needed to. Graham took her to a private suite in a high-rise hotel overlooking the Charles River. The room smelled like clean linen and money. Evie stood by the window, staring at the city. This is insane, she whispered. It's dangerous, Graham corrected. Insane would be thinking they'll let you walk into this unprepared. They, Evie asked, though she already felt the answer. Graham slid a folder across the table. Gideon Blackwood's nephews, he said. His brother's sons. Dorian, Spencer, Julian. They expected to inherit control of Blackwood Development Group. Evie opened the folder. 3 faces stared back. Dorian looked polished, the kind of man who smiled at cameras and stabbed people in boardrooms. Spencer looked soft around the eyes, the kind of softness that hid greed. Julian looked sharp and angry, like he was always one inconvenience away from yelling. They hate me already, Evie said quietly. They don't hate you, Graham replied. They hate what you represent. And what do I represent? Evie asked. Graham's eyes were steady. An obstacle, he said. A threat. Proof that Gideon Blackwood wasn't as controllable as they believed. Evie's fingers tightened on the folder. What do I do? Graham leaned back. You learn, he said. You become someone they can't dismiss. That week was not a makeover. It was a transformation. Yes, there was a stylist who cut her hair into a clean, powerful shape that framed her face like it finally belonged to her. Yes, there were clothes that fit her like armor rather than a costume. But the real change happened in the small moments. Evie learning to hold eye contact without apologizing for existing. Evie learning to speak slowly to let silence do work. Evie learning that power wasn't volume, it was certainty. Graham taught her in the same way someone might teach a person to swim by throwing them into deep water, except he stayed close enough that she wouldn't drown. Never answer immediately, he said one evening as they reviewed board documents. When someone asks a question, they're often looking for weakness in your reaction. Evie rubbed her temples. I'm not built for this. Graham looked up. You were built for surviving, he said. That's harder. This is just a different battlefield. On Friday, Graham brought Evie to the headquarters of Blackwood Development Group. BDG rose from the city like a monument, glass and steel, a clean, modern tower that reflected the clouds like it owned the sky. The lobby smelled like polished stone and expensive perfume. Evie's palms sweat. Graham's voice was low as they walked. Remember, he said, they'll try to make you feel like you don't belong. Evie swallowed. I don't belong, she whispered. Graham glanced at her. Belonging is a story people sell to protect their territory, he said. Today, you stop buying it. They entered a conference room on the top floor. And there they were. Dorian, Spencer, Julian. 3 men who stood when Evie entered not out of respect, but out of performance. Dorian's smile was smooth. Evelyn, he said, voice rich. Or do you prefer Evie? Evie met his eyes. Evie is fine, she said. Spencer tilted his head. It's just surprising, he said lightly, that Uncle Gideon never mentioned you. Julian snorted. He mentioned plenty, Julian muttered. Just not the mistakes. Evie felt heat rise in her cheeks. Graham's hand moved slightly, just enough that Evie saw it in her peripheral vision. A reminder. Don't react. Dorian gestured to a chair. Please, he said. We want to talk. Evie didn't sit immediately. She let the pause stretch. 3 men watched her. Then she sat. Dorian folded his hands. We understand this is overwhelming, he began. A sudden inheritance. A new world. We want to make this easier for you. Evie's stomach tightened. Spencer slid an envelope across the table. Thick. Heavy. Evie didn't touch it. What is that? She asked. Spencer smiled gently as if he were offering charity. $500,000, he said. A clean beginning. No strings. Evie's fingers went cold. No strings, she repeated. Dorian's smile sharpened. Well, he admitted one string. You sign a statement declining the inheritance. You walk away. You live comfortably, quietly. Julian leaned forward, eyes hard. You get your money, he said. We get our company back. Everyone wins. Evie stared at the envelope. $500,000. It was more money than she'd ever imagined holding. It could erase her past in one signature. It could buy safety. And it was also, she realized, an insult. A way to reduce her worth to an inconvenience fee. Evie looked up at Dorian. You don't want me here, she said. Dorian's eyes didn't blink. We're trying to help you, he replied. Evie's voice stayed calm. You're trying to buy me, she corrected. Because you think I'm cheap. Spencer's smile faltered. That's not. Evie raised her hand gently. No, she said. It is. She pushed the envelope back without opening it. I'm not signing anything. Julian's chair scraped sharply. You don't know what you're doing, he snapped. Evie turned to him slowly. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said. I'm not disappearing because you're uncomfortable. Dorian's smile vanished for the first time. For half a second, something like anger flashed beneath the polish. Then it was gone, replaced by calm. Evie, he said softly, this world will eat you alive. Evie felt her heartbeat steady. Then it'll choke, she said. Graham's eyes flicked to her approval, brief as a blink. The meeting ended politely. But as Evie and Graham stepped into the elevator, Evie could feel it. The shift. The moment the Blackwood heirs stopped seeing her as a problem to be solved gently, and started seeing her as a problem to be crushed. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime. Evie's reflection stared back in the mirrored wall. Hair, neat eyes, tired but awake, lips pressed into a line that had learned how to hold. She whispered almost to herself, "They're going to come for me." Graham's voice was quiet. "They already are," he said. They didn't attack Evie directly. Not at first, because direct attacks left fingerprints, and the Blackwood heirs were careful until greed made them careless. The first sign came 2 days later when Graham received a call and his expression changed. He didn't say anything immediately. He just closed the door of the suite and looked at Evie like he was measuring the distance between her and the ground. "What?" Evie asked. Graham exhaled. "They've found leverage," he said. Evie's stomach twisted. "What leverage do they have I don't have?" Graham's eyes held hers. "Your ex-husband," he said. Evie's chest tightened. "Noah," she whispered. "They reached out to him," Graham continued. "Offered him money." Evie laughed, once bitter. "He'll take it," she said without hesitation. "He always takes." Graham nodded. "They want him to testify you're unstable," he said. "That you're mentally unfit, that you're running a scheme." Evie's hands shook. "That's insane," she breathed. "I'm not." "I know," Graham said. "But the court of public perception doesn't require truth. It requires a story that sounds believable to the right people." Evie pressed her fingers against her temple. "They'll call me crazy," she whispered, voice small. "They'll make me a joke." Graham watched her. "They want you to panic," he said. "They want you to scream, to break, to prove their narrative." Evie's eyes burned. "I'm so tired," she admitted. "I'm tired of being the one who gets stepped on." Graham's voice didn't soften, but it steadied. "Then stop being the floor," he said. "Be the trap." Evie stared. "What do you mean?" Graham opened his briefcase and slid a small item onto the table. A pen. Normal-looking. Sleek. Evie frowned. "A pen." Graham's eyes were sharp. "A recording device," he said. "Legal in this context because we're collecting evidence of bribery and coercion related to estate fraud. You will not use it casually. You will use it precisely." Evie's heartbeat quickened. "You want me to talk to Noah?" she realized. Graham nodded. "You won't beg him," he said. "You won't argue. You'll let him speak. Let him reveal who he is when he believes you're powerless." Evie's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can," she admitted. "Being near him, it makes me feel..." Small Graham supplied. Evie nodded. Graham leaned forward. "Evie," he said quietly, "the version of you Noah knows is the version he built in his head, a woman who would always apologize for existing." Evie's fingers curled. "That woman isn't gone," she whispered. "She's just quieter now." Graham held her gaze. "Then let her be quiet," he said. "We don't need her to fight. We need her to listen." That evening, Evie texted Noah. "Can we talk? I need closure." Noah replied within minutes. "Sure, but make it quick. I'm busy." "Busy." Evie almost laughed. They met at a cafe near downtown where the seats were too modern and the music too loud. Noah arrived in a confident stride, wearing a coat he couldn't afford, hair styled carefully like he was auditioning for the life he wanted. He sat without asking. "What is this?" he asked, already impatient. Evie placed the recording pen on the table, clipped to her notebook like it belonged there. She kept her hands still. "I just wanted to understand," she said softly. "Why you did it." Noah scoffed. "Evie, don't do this." "Please," she said, voice quiet. "I need to know. Was I really that awful?" Noah's eyes narrowed. For a moment, something like satisfaction moved across his face. Because he liked that question. He liked being the one who decided her worth. "You were exhausting," he said bluntly. "Always tired. Always stressed. Always needy." Evie's fingers tightened under the table. "I worked 2 jobs," she whispered. Noah shrugged. "You made that your personality," he said. It was embarrassing. Evie's vision blurred, but she blinked it away. "And Vivian," she said, "was she better?" Noah leaned back, smug. "She's everything you're not," he said. "She has money, connections, class." Class. Evie swallowed. "So you left me because I was poor." Noah rolled his eyes. I left you because you were small, he said, and I'm not built for small. Evie's heartbeat was loud in her ears. She forced her voice steady. And now she said you're going to testify against me. Noah's expression flickered just a second of surprise. Then his face smoothed. What are you talking about? Evie lowered her gaze like she was ashamed. They said you're going to tell people I'm unstable, she whispered. That I'm crazy. Noah's mouth twisted. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You are unstable, he said softly, like he was doing her a favor. You always have been. Evie's hands stayed still. And they're paying you for that, she said quietly. Noah's eyes flashed. No, he snapped too fast. Evie looked up, eyes shining like she might cry. How much? She whispered. Noah hesitated. Just a beat. A greedy beat. Then he smirked. 50,000, he said, and the number came out like a victory. Evie let her shoulders sag like defeat. That's a lot, she whispered. Noah's eyes gleamed. It's what I'm worth, he said. Evie's stomach turned. And Vivian knows, she asked, voice trembling. Noah's smile widened. Vivian helped arrange it, he said. She understands how this world works. Unlike you. Evie nodded slowly, pretending she was broken. Inside, something colder took shape. Noah kept talking because he couldn't help himself. He bragged about finally getting out. He bragged about moving up. He bragged about how the Blackwood heirs promised a place for him once Evie was discredited. Every word was a nail in his own coffin. When he finally stood to leave, he leaned down close enough that Evie could smell his cologne, the same one she'd bought him last Christmas with tip money. Don't fight this, he murmured. You'll lose. You always do. He walked away. Evie stayed seated, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the pen. The cafe music played on. People laughed. Cups clinked. The world didn't know. But Evie did. She had what she needed. Not revenge. Proof. When she returned to the suite, Graham listened to the recording without changing expression. At the end, he clicked the file closed and looked at Evie. You did well, he said. Evie's voice was raw. I felt like I was dying, she admitted. Graham's gaze didn't soften. It's worse than dying, he said. It's watching the person you loved choose money over you and realizing they were never who you thought. Evie's eyes burned. So what now? Graham's lips curved slightly. Now, he said, we let the Blackwoods finish the mistake they've started. Blackwood Hall was designed to intimidate. It had once been a private library, and Gideon Blackwood's personal estate moved piece by piece into a wing of BDG's headquarters after a renovation. Old money loved old symbols. Books that looked untouched. Wood that looked expensive. Silence that sounded like authority. Evie walked in beside Graham, wearing a calm expression she had practiced in a mirror until it stopped feeling like pretending and started feeling like truth. The Blackwood heirs were already there. Dorian stood with his hands behind his back, posture perfect. Spencer sat tapping a finger on his knee, smile faint. Julian leaned against the wall like the room offended him. Noah sat near the end of the table, shoulders squared like he was ready to perform. Vivian Cross stood behind him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder, a gesture that was meant to say, he belongs to me now. Evie noticed something else. Vivian's eyes didn't meet hers. Vivian didn't look at Evie like a rival. She looked at Evie like an inconvenience that should have stayed invisible. A clerk began the proceedings. Graham opened the will. His voice carried through the room with a measured, controlled cadence, every word precise. In accordance with the last will and testament of Gideon Alexander Blackwood, Dorian's face remained calm. Spencer's eyes gleamed. Julian's jaw clenched. Graham's eyes lifted to Evie for a brief second. And then he read the line that changed everything. I acknowledge Evelyn Archer Hart as my biological daughter. She is hereby designated sole heir of my personal estate and controlling interest in Blackwood Development Group. Silence crashed into the room. Dorian's smile froze. Spencer's face tightened. Julian's eyes flared with fury. Noah's mouth opened slightly, as if he hadn't expected the words to sound so final. Vivian's hand slid off Noah's shoulder. Evie kept her face steady. Inside, her heart pounded like a war drum. Dorian recovered first. He stepped forward, voice smooth as oil. This is astonishing, he said. But surely there must be concerns about legitimacy. Graham didn't blink. Paternity has been legally verified, he said. Spencer leaned forward. And her fitness, Spencer asked softly, to control a corporation of this size. Graham's eyes narrowed slightly. That, he said, is not your decision. Julian scoffed. Then it should be the court's. Julian snapped. Because we have reason to believe she's not stable. Evie felt the room tilt. Here it was. The planned narrative. Dorian's gaze slid to Noah. Noah stood clearing his throat like an actor stepping into the spotlight. He looked at Evie, and for a second there was something in his eyes, something like guilt. Then it vanished, replaced by arrogance. Evelyn is unwell, Noah said. I lived with her. I know. Evie didn't react. She simply watched him. Noah continued, voice gaining confidence. She has mood swings, paranoia, delusions. She believes people are out to get her. She's always been. Graham raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Mr. Pierce, Graham said calmly, before you continue, I'd like to remind you that false testimony in an estate matter constitutes fraud. Noah's face tightened. I'm telling the truth, he snapped. Vivian's lips curved in a satisfied smile. Dorian sighed as if regretting the necessity of this. We didn't want it to come to this, Dorian said, but the company cannot be placed in unfit hands. Evie finally spoke. Her voice was soft. Unfit, she repeated. Dorian's smile returned faint. I'm afraid so, he said. Evie's gaze moved slowly to Noah. Say it, she whispered. Noah frowned. What? Evie's eyes held his like a hook. Call me a burden, she said quietly. Since you seem to like that word. Noah's face flushed. Graham leaned forward slightly. Proceed, Graham said to Noah, if you wish. Noah's throat bobbed. He glanced at Dorian, then Spencer, then Julian, 3 men who expected him to do his job. Noah's pride rose to meet the moment. You were a burden, he snapped at Evie. You still are. You're... Evie lifted her hand. Stop, she said gently. The room went quiet again. Evie reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. She placed it on the table with deliberate care, smoothing it slightly with one finger. Noah's eyes locked onto it. Evie's voice was calm, almost tender. Do you remember this? She asked. Noah swallowed. Evie looked at the Blackwood heirs. You offered me $500,000 to walk away, she said. And when I didn't, you decided to buy a witness. Spencer's smile sharpened. That's an accusation, Spencer said, and a dangerous one. Evie nodded once. Yes, she said. It is. She turned to Graham. Play it, she said. Graham nodded. The screen flickered to life, and the room filled with Noah's voice, recorded unfiltered greedy. 50 grand. That's it. For me to say she's unstable. Noah froze. Vivian's face went blank. Dorian's calm shattered just a crack. Spencer's eyes widened. Julian swore under his breath. The video continued. Noah's voice again. Vivian helped arrange it. She understands how this world works. Vivian took a step back as if distance could erase sound. The video showed more footage from a security camera in a private BDG lounge where Spencer slid an envelope toward Noah, where Dorian's hand patted Noah's shoulder like a purchase, where Julian laughed. Clear, undeniable, bribery, coercion, fraud. Evie watched them as the truth played out, her face unreadable. When the video ended, the silence didn't feel like intimidation anymore. It felt like judgment. Graham spoke into it, voice cold. In Gideon Blackwood's will, he said, there is a clause, Section 12, subsection C, commonly referred to as the betrayal clause. Dorian's face tightened. Graham continued. Any beneficiary who attempts to undermine the rightful heir through fraud, coercion, or perjury will be immediately disinherited and removed from all roles within Blackwood Development Group. Spencer's lips parted. Julian's eyes flashed with panic. Dorian's voice came out too controlled. That clause was meant for outsiders, he said, not family. Graham's eyes were sharp. Gideon Blackwood, he replied, was very specific about who he believed capable of betrayal. Evie finally spoke again. Her voice was quiet enough that everyone leaned in to hear it. He knew you, she said simply. Dorian's face went pale. Spencer's smile died completely. Julian's anger turned into something uglier fear. Noah's knees looked weak. Vivian's eyes slid away from him. And in that moment, the hierarchy broke. The Blackwood heirs weren't untouchable. They were just men who had overplayed their hand. A clerk stepped forward, voice official. In light of the evidence presented and per the terms of the will, the clerk said Dorian Blackwood, Spencer Blackwood, and Julian Blackwood are hereby removed from any claim to the estate and any position within Blackwood Development Group. Effective immediately. Dorian's jaw clenched. Spencer's hand trembled. Julian exploded. "This is insane!" Julian shouted. "You can't!" Security appeared at the door, not rushing, not dramatic, simply present. The kind of security that existed to make decisions feel final. Evie turned to Noah. He looked like he might speak, but his voice failed him. Graham addressed him calmly. "Mr. Pierce," he said, "your payment, if it ever existed, has been seized as evidence and voided." Noah's mouth opened. No, wait," he stammered. "Vivian." Vivian Cross finally looked at him. Her face held no love, no loyalty, only disgust, thinly disguised. "You were useful," she said softly. "Now you're a problem." Noah stared at her, stunned. She picked up her purse and walked toward the door without another glance. Noah's world crumbled in one sentence. Evie watched him with an expression that was not hatred. It was clarity. Because revenge wasn't always fire. Sometimes it was simply letting someone see the consequences of their choices without shielding them. As the Blackwood heirs were escorted out, Dorian's eyes locked onto Evie. This time there was no smile, only a promise. "You think you won," he hissed. Evie tilted her head slightly. "I didn't think," she replied. "I proved." Dorian's face twisted, but security moved him along. The door closed. And for the first time, Blackwood Hall belonged to the person Gideon Blackwood had chosen. Evie. Noah Pierce lost everything faster than he had gained it because what he gained was never real to begin with. The first loss was Vivian. He texted her that night, frantic. No response. He called. Voicemail. He went to her office the next day and was told she was unavailable. By Friday, he was blocked. His new life vanished like fog. The second loss was the lie he told himself that he could always climb by stepping on someone else. Because Evie didn't chase him. She didn't shout. She didn't post anything online. She simply moved. Quietly, decisively, like a door closing. 3 weeks after Blackwood Hall, Noah received an email from Meridian Civic Solutions, his employer. A company-wide announcement. Meridian Civic Solutions is now a subsidiary of Blackwood Development Group. Noah reread the line 3 times, not understanding. Then his phone rang. Human Resources. He answered with a brittle voice. "Hello?" A polite woman spoke. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "this is regarding your employment status." Noah's stomach sunk. "What's going on?" he demanded. The woman's tone stayed neutral. "Your position is being terminated effective immediately," she said. "You'll receive a formal letter." Noah's breath hitched. "You can't fire me," he snapped. "I didn't do anything." A pause. Then, another voice came on the line. Evie's. Calm. Steady. "Noah," she said. Noah froze. "Evie," he whispered, panic spilling into his voice. Listen, I can explain." Evie didn't raise her voice. "I'm sure you can," she said. "You always can." Noah's words tumbled out. "I didn't mean it, okay? They pressured me. Vivian pressured me, those Blackwood guys, Evie. I didn't know what I was doing." Evie's silence was heavier than any argument. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost gentle. "You knew exactly what you were doing," she said. "You just thought you'd get away with it." Noah swallowed hard. "Please," he begged. "I need this job. Evie's voice didn't change. "You threw $20 at me," she said quietly, "and you thought that was the end." Noah's throat tightened. "I was angry," he whispered. "I was stupid. I'm sorry." Evie's breath was soft through the receiver. "Meet me in the lobby," she said. "Now." Noah almost ran. He arrived at Meridian's lobby, sweaty, desperate eyes wild. He saw Evie immediately standing near the reception desk in a dark coat, hair-perfect posture like she owned the building. Because she did. Noah stopped in front of her chest, heaving. "Evie," he said, voice cracking. "Please." Evie looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. Not any 20, the same crumpled one. She held it out to him between 2 fingers. Noah stared at it like it was a ghost. Evie's eyes were steady. "Here," she said, "your last payment." Noah's face flushed. "Evie, don't." Evie placed it in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "Keep it," she said. "You seemed proud of it." Noah's mouth opened. Evie's voice remained calm. "You're done here," she said. "Security will escort you out." Noah's eyes filled. He looked around like he expected someone to save him. No one moved. Two security guards stepped forward, professional silent. Noah's voice broke into something ugly. "You think you're better than me now?" he shouted, desperation, turning to anger because anger was easier than shame. Evie didn't flinch. "I don't think," she said softly. "I know what I survived." Noah's jaw trembled. "You were nothing without me," he spat. Evie tilted her head. The faintest sadness flickered in her eyes, sadness for the version of herself that had believed in him. Then it was gone. "I was everything despite you," she said. Security guided Noah away. He didn't fight. He just looked back once, eyes empty, clutching the 20 like it was proof that he had once been powerful over her. Evie watched him leave. And when the doors closed behind him, she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for years. 6 months passed. Boston shifted from winter to a brittle spring, and then into warm, bright summer. Under Evie's leadership, BDG changed quietly at first, then loudly enough that people couldn't ignore it. She funded community housing projects instead of flashy vanity towers. She opened apprenticeships and paid living wages. She turned empty lots into clinics and parks. And the stock price climbed, not because she chased profit like a hunger, but because she understood something the old board had forgotten. A city will support the people who support it. Newspapers called her unexpected. Analysts called her disruptive. Employees called her the first one who listened. Evie didn't care what strangers called her. She cared about walking into her day without feeling like she had to apologize for being alive. One evening, after a long meeting, Evie told her driver to take the long way home. The city blurred past the window, familiar and strange at the same time. And without quite deciding to, she found herself asking to stop at Harborline Diner. The same buzzing sign, the same cracked sidewalk, the same smell, coffee, oil, soap, and something like memory. Evie stepped inside alone. The bell above the door chimed. A few heads turned, then looked away. She chose a booth near the window. For a moment, she simply sat there and listened. The clatter of plates, the hum of conversation, the low music. Her old life still alive, still moving. A server approached. Evie looked up, and her breath caught. Noah Pierce stood there in a wrinkled diner uniform, hair slightly longer, face thinner. His eyes had dark circles. His hands looked rougher than Evie remembered. He held a notepad like it weighed too much. For a second, he didn't recognize her. Then his gaze sharpened. His face drained of color. "Evie," he whispered. Evie's heart didn't lurch the way it once would have. It simply acknowledged. "Hi, Noah," she said calmly. Noah looked around as if someone might be watching, judging. His voice came out hoarse. What are you doing here?" Evie glanced at the menu like it was new. "Eating," she said. Noah's mouth opened, then closed. He cleared his throat, trying to regain something dignity, control anything. "Can I get you something to drink?" he asked, voice small. Evie met his eyes. "Coffee," she said. "Black." Noah nodded quickly and turned to go. His shoulders slumped more than they used to. When he returned, he set the mug down with hands that trembled slightly. Evie watched his fingers. Calloused, tired. A mirror of who she used to be. Noah swallowed. "I didn't know you still came here," he said softly. Evie stirred her coffee slowly. "I didn't plan to," she admitted. Noah's voice cracked. You look different." Evie's lips curved faintly. "So do you," she said. Noah flinched. He tried to smile, but it looked like pain. "I deserve that," he whispered. Evie didn't argue. She didn't need to. Noah's eyes dropped to the table. "I'm sorry," he said, voice barely audible over the diner noise. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." Evie watched him for a long moment. 6 months ago, she would have wanted him to suffer. Now she realized she didn't. Not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because she didn't want her life to revolve around him anymore, not even in revenge. Evie finished her coffee. She stood, smoothing her coat. Noah's eyes followed her, desperate for something, anything, an insult, forgiveness proof. She still felt something strong enough to validate him. Evie reached into her pocket, pulled out a $20 bill. Crisp this time, not crumpled. She placed it on the table. Noah stared at it. Evie's voice was quiet. "A tip," she said. Noah's face twisted. "Evie." Evie shook her head gently. "It's not punishment," she said. "It's closure." Noah's eyes shimmered. "That 20, he whispered. I think about it every day." Evie nodded once. "I did too," she admitted. Then she looked at him, really looked. And what she felt wasn't rage. It was something like pity and something like freedom. "Take care of yourself," she said softly. Noah's voice broke. "I don't know how he confessed." Evie paused at the aisle. Her words came like a final gift she didn't owe him. "Start by telling the truth," she said, "even when it makes you look small." Noah nodded, tears slipping free. Evie turned and walked out. The bell chimed again as the door closed behind her. Outside, the air smelled like summer rain on warm pavement. Evie stood under the diner's buzzing sign for a moment, looking at the city she used to survive in and now helped shape. She didn't feel like a waitress pretending to be powerful. She felt like a woman who had learned she didn't need permission. Behind the window, Noah stared at the $20 bill like it was a curse and a blessing. And for the first time in his life, the weight in his chest wasn't ambition. It was regret. Real regret. The kind that arrives too late and stays. Evie walked down the sidewalk, her footsteps steady, her shadow long in the streetlight glow. She didn't look back, because the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was becoming the kind of person who no longer needed revenge at all. If this story left something heavy in your chest, if you've ever been called a burden by someone who was living off your light, leave a comment with one word: free. You're not alone. And your life doesn't end where someone else decided you were worth only $20.